And welcome to Understanding Photography with Kim Ayres, episode 245. If you're looking to improve your understanding of photography, then you've come to the right place. Today we're going to be having a feedback session. April in Long Island, New York, Robert in Texas, and Viji in Chennai in India have all sent in images which they're not particularly happy about, or they're looking for improvements on their notion of edits or what they could do with them. So that's what we're going to be looking at today. So stick around, leave a comment, let me know you're here. So yes, here we are live on YouTube, and yes, like I say, if you happen to be watching live, then leave a comment, say hello, tell me where you are, tell me what the weather's doing, all the usual kind of stuff, and get the chat going. If you're watching the recorded version, well, you can still leave a comment below. I just won't happen to be able to respond to it live. If you are commenting though on anything specific in the video, try and be clear about what section it is you are commenting on. Because there's no the comments in the time section don't actually, or comments in the on the video don't actually correspond to any time point, so I won't necessarily know which bit you're talking about unless you're clear. Right, that said, yeah, I see we've got a couple of people in already. April says, greetings and happy Father's Day from Long Island, New York. And of course, yes, it is Father's Day. Well, it is certainly here in the UK. Is it so is it North America as well? I mean, there's a global thing. Didn't seem to have Father's Day when I was a kid, but you can be sure that I've exploited it something rotten since I became a father myself. Yes, so happy Father's Day to all fathers out there, all those who have a father and those who have a father who are still speaking to them, all those who would wish to have a father, all the rest of it. Anyway, if you celebrate it, then happy Father's Day. And yes, so where are we at? Robert says happy Father's Day from cloudy Texas. Susan says, good day from a rather dreich Cucubri. Dreich is such a lovely word. I'll let Kim explain dreich to the non-Scots among us. Happy Father's Day, yes. Well, yes, dreich. As a weather formation, it is definitely dreich outside. So it's a really good Scots word, and it's basically, what's the other word? Onomatopoeia. It sounds like what it is, dreich. It's grey, it's dull, it's a bit wet. It's just miserable. It's the kind of weather where you just go, ugh. Sort of saps the soul a bit. That's dreich for you. So yeah, it's kind of got that today. However, soul is not being sapped because we're here and on this podcast, which is much more lively. And right, yes. So that's basically. So we're making we can make a start now, I think. Quick update on the Smug Points Leaderboard. So for this month, because of the 3-photo story challenge that I've got set for next week, I'll come back and explain a bit more of that in a little while. Well, I did for long complicated reasons. The Smug Points are a May and June overlap, so combined rather than it just being for the month alone. And currently in the combination, Anne in Texas is sitting out ahead at 75 Smug Points. Robert is on 65, Viji is on 55, Meg is on 45, Nadia is on 40, and everybody else is less than 40. So, all to play for. We've got today, which is the feedback session. So Viji, April and Robert will all be getting a bonus 25 Smug Points for having sent in images for critique. Plus, so far, Robert and April have also joined in the live and said hello, so they'll also be getting an extra 5 Smug Points each, so 30 each to both of them, with 25 for Viji and an extra 5 if she turns up today and can say hello during the live podcast. Because you get 5 Smug Points just for actually saying hello while watching live. So if you happen to be watching live, yes, let me know you're here. And if Anne happens to be watching, then she should be maybe sneaking a couple of extra points to see if she can stay ahead for this one. Because next week then is going to be the challenge, and there's bonus Smug Points to be had for that as well. So all to play for the rest of June. Okay. So, all that bit out of the way, let's make a little start. So today we're talking about a feedback session, and I have those generally about once a month or so, but the idea with a feedback session is that you can send me your images for feedback, critique, and get a better understanding of where your sticking points are and how to get past them. And it really is the best way of improving your photography. The biggest problem with our photography is we take photos and we are very often too close to them. We can't necessarily see past our own blind spots. And that's the thing with blind spots, is we don't see them. They tend to be more obvious to other people. But most other people won't tell us where we're going wrong with our photos because, well, either politeness or they don't necessarily know themselves. Most other people looking at your photos aren't professional photographers. And then if I see a photo which I can see clearly something's wrong, but somebody hasn't asked for my advice, well, unsolicited advice is always taken as criticism and not necessarily positive criticism. So it's not my place to give somebody advice if they haven't asked for it. They could be quite happy with that photo. They don't need me barging in and saying they could have done this better. It's not, it's rude, it's not polite, it's not a particularly nice thing to do. So the problem is when we put up our photos, people don't tell us when they'll all say love this photo or whatever, but they won't give us proper critique and feedback. So we can end up with a slightly overinflated sense of our ability, because if we only ever get good feedback, but we never actually get anybody telling us where we've gone wrong, how are we going to know how to improve our photography? So all that's about the point of this place here, this little tiny corner of the internet is a place where you can send your images and get genuine, proper feedback on your images, which is one of the best ways to learn. A couple more comments. Oh, Meg's joined us and says hello everyone. Oh, and Anne says hello, I am here. Great. Anne does get her now bonus 5 points, which will mean that she'll be battling head to head, I think, with Robert and Viji on on who wins the Smug Points for June. Right, okay, so with all that in mind, let's make a start. So what we're going to do is I'm going to start with April, I think. Now, let me find April's photo and click that there and swap that over to here. And what we have here is April says, this is a photo I took while going to New York City. I took it out of my passenger car window while my husband was driving. I did not have my window fully down, which I regret. It was about half a mile away. Half a mile away from what? I don't think you could have been half a mile away from that wall, because otherwise you must have had a zoom like nobody's, just an incredible zoom. Or were you just half a mile away from New York City? What would you suggest to do with this photo to make it look the best it can? Thank you so much. Okay, so what we have here then is either in or on the outskirts of New York City. We have almost one of those classic kind of scenes where we've got the brickwork of this big building and those wonderful metal fire escapes, and rather beautifully with the sun out we've got all these shadows coming down as well. And then the shadows, the direction of the shadows also happen to be running in exactly the same direction as the actual ladder themselves. So we've got all these diagonals coming down at a very specific angle, which looks rather cool. So the question is then what can we do to improve this photo? And there are a couple of things that sort of leap out at us. So first of all, what we're really talking about is, well, there's technical issues and there's narrative issues. So the narrative, we're kind of there, we're mostly there. The story is the shadows and the lines on this New York brickwork building. Painted white, and then some of the white has come off over the years. But on the technical side, it's slightly tilted. And on the other side of it, it's which bits are the most interesting bit. And that's kind of what we're trying to get to. So what I will do first of all is let me open this in Photoshop. And what we have here then, we've got the picture. Now, it's not a straightforward, slightly tilted camera. It's a slightly tilted, but also a slight angle, because if I grab this corner and I straighten it this way, and if I kind of line up the horizontals, then the verticals don't quite look right. So what we have to do is we have to kind of do a little bit of sort of lens correction on it and what have you. So what I'm going to do, first of all, actually, I will come out of crop. I'm going to duplicate this layer so we can see what difference it makes. And then I'm going to transform. Now, Control or Command T gives the same thing. Otherwise, you go to Edit, Transform, and then, well, just Control T, Edit, Transform, and Free Transform, or Free Transform rather. Yes, you just click Free Transform. And now what it's done is it's given me this little thing where I've got little anchors and hooks which I can grab. Now, if I just grab one of the corners or the top or the bottom, it kind of moves everything together, keeping the ratio. But what we're wanting to do is, if I hold down again the Control or Command button, depending on you're on PC or Apple, I can grab a corner and I can move it round and it anchors on the other corners. Now, the thing is I'm essentially going to do this by eye. I'm going to try and sort of straighten this bit down while trying to pull this bit down, and it's actually not that necessarily easy to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a couple of guides. Now, if you, again, I'm using Photoshop, they may well be, if you're using a different editing program, you might have something similar where you can put some kind of grid across the front. Here, if I just click on the little rulers bit here and drag, I get a guideline. And I'm going to just stick a couple of these, one roughly at the top, one roughly in the middle, one somewhere down the bottom, and then I'm also going to bring in from the side, one there, roughly one in the middle, and one over here. And these will give me a sense of whether the edges of the windows are straight or not, and whether the tops are lined up or whether the middles are lined up. So now what I can do is, if I if I do the Control T then, and I can kind of pull this bottom one down, we can see that what it does is I can start to line up along these bottom ones here. This window at the top here means what I might do is I would grab the opposite one and bring that one up to kind of match up with these. And I can now use these guides as to where I'm going. What I can also see is, if we look from the middle guide here, that the window is slightly, there's less here, so it's leaning over slightly. So what I need to do now is also grab that, and I can swivel that a bit. Well, okay, well, let's take that. Maybe let's pull this one over just a little bit so that I can get straight, so that the verticals are all doing the vertical bit. The horizontals are now doing the horizontal bit. And now I can click Enter, and now we've got the image pretty much straight as we wanted it. So it's almost, actually, I'm just going to go Control T again, because I think I could just grab that and pull that down a little bit just to make sure on the bottom here that these are more lined up. So I think that's more or less it, but you could play around with it for a little while. Oh, I see Viji has joined us and says good evening everyone from a warm Chennai. Excellent. Right, okay. So now I've got that as straight as I want it. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to get rid of those guides. Now what I can do is, the way in Photoshop, if I'm on, I can grab it and drag it out of picture, or I can go up to View, Guides, Clear Guides. And now I'm back to the picture that I wanted. Okay, so that's got it straight. That's now to what we want to figure out what to do next. Now the next bit is, where is the interesting bit of the story happening? And the interesting bit for this is these stairs and shadows. So this part of it's interesting, this part of it's interesting, that part over on the left maybe less so, and there's a big gap in the middle here. Because if I was to just take the crop and drag this in and do something like that, just get rid of that outer edge, it still feels very dominant with the gap. And that's a tricky one. That's kind of the photo you've taken. Now, if you're traveling in a moving car, as you say, you don't have a lot of time to line up, you don't have a lot of time to go click, so you can't really move around. But in an ideal world, what you would do is try and, if you were standing there, you would sort of zoom in and really kind of pick your spot, and to whether that was, just do something like this, where you get 2 floors and a bit of white space on either side, or something like this where there's 3 windows more kind of in shadow, and the stairs are going in the opposite direction. But as it is, this is what you've grabbed. So what can we do? And there is a way that we can cut down a sort of small, make the gap smaller. And it depends on your editing what you want to do. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to select this, and I'm going to select it over to this middle bit. In fact, the easiest thing for me to do is I'm going to select it to just the edge of the window frames here, and then I'm going to copy that section and paste it on top. So if you look over here, we can see that I've now got this bit here. This is going to allow me to move this upper section, and then what I can do is line it up with the edge of the window frames on this side. Now, it's not absolutely exact, and in fact what I might need to do is a Control T and just drag that down a little bit, move that up a little bit, and it's essentially a little bit of click and play until you get something exactly where you want it. But I will, yeah, if I was just spending my own time purely on this, then I could be here for hours, but I'll do that, which is for the moment close enough. And now when we come to the crop, I just bring this into here and I can crop that bit off. And now what we find is I've gone from a 2 window width to a 1 window width, and it doesn't feel quite as that gap isn't grabbing us quite so hard. So now what we need to do is, it still feels unbalanced because we've got all this bit on the left. So maybe what we could do now is bring this in. If we brought it into there, say, what happens? Feels like there's a bit of a strong white gap, because over here the gap at the other side of the windows has got shadow on it, whereas here it's quite bright. So what I might do is actually bring it in a bit further now I can either have it just the other side of the window, or I could have it cutting halfway through the window, but we'll go just partly through. Now at the bottom we've got a slight cut through the middle of the windows, so at the top I think I will take it through and cut it through this bit of window as well. So here then, this is now giving us our composition, our layout. Now I think that it's a fun thing, but it feels busy. It feels very busy. There's so much in the way of going on with the light and the shadow. It's how we kind of create a little bit of differentiation. Now, interesting, generally speaking, quite often when you've got a lot of hard shadow and not a lot of colour in it, the temptation is to go black and white. Okay, so if I was to, let me just copy all those into a fresh layer. What I could do, if I was to go to Filter, Camera or Filter, and I go to black and white, we can do this. It's still very busy. And then if I bump up the contrast to make the most of those shadows, you kind of boost the, now maybe if I boost but then we would lose too much of the detail. It's a difficult one because, and then if we go back to, or we use the other kind of one for playing with the contrast, is the clarity. We grab the clarities tool, we do that, and again, if anything, it just makes the busyness even busier. So it's a tricky one. So after playing around with this for a little bit, what I decided to do was, I thought maybe what we do is we play with the colour a little bit. Now we've talked about colour grading and what have you, and in Photoshop there's a little option over in your menu, your quick menu things, called colour lookup. And colour lookup adds a chunk of different colour gradings to it, so you can make it green, or or you can echo particular kinds of film and stuff like that. So you can see that it kind of plays around. But and looking through this, I found not edgy amber, that wasn't the one. Fall colours. There we go. Fall colours seem to kind of create this. It sort of warmed up the brickwork while allowing the sort of bluishness of the reflections of the sky and the window to sort of still be there. And it also kind of made the actual steps themselves feel sort of slightly rusty. So I found that when we sort of put that on it, it kind of helped distinguish it a little bit. And then what we do, if we take vibrance, right, now vibrance tends to boost the yellows and blues. So I can take this and I move this up, and you can see it boosts it even more, creates this contrast between the blues and the yellows. So now we end up with these kind of rusty browns, warm rusty browns, and then the cool blues reflected in the windows. And overall, I think what happens then is we end up with this scene where we are looking at the building as a whole, and then we've got all the shadows and everything else. And I just think it makes it slightly easier to see what's going on in the shape. There's so many lovely bits of lines and shapes here, but it can sometimes just feel a bit too busy. So our approach here has been, how do we make it so that it really we can make sense of the image? And overall, I think this tends to be a slightly better edit. So if we go from essentially this, I mean, where were we in the history? If we go back to the original image, which is this, where the gaps to the left and to the center are really kind of grabbing the attention much more, and it's also leaning slightly to one side, and we take it to this, I think we end up with a picture which has much more going for it. So it's still got the essence of what you were seeing. We've ramped it up. We've looked for the story. We've looked for ways of taking away the busyness, but still managing to keep an essence of it, but also make more sense of it. So I hope that kind of makes sense to you there. So thank you very much for sending that one in, April. Certainly it was gave me something to play with to sort of work out how to come up with something interesting, and I hope you found that useful. Right, okay. Also comments. What else have we got here? So to head back here, so yes, Viji joined us and said, "Oh yes, you sort of getting capture from a moving car without losing focus. Even at standstill, I lose focus." Right. Osho has joined us and says, "Good day, good day." Hello, Osho. Osho, do you actually have another name that we could call you by, or do you just prefer to be called Osho? But if the O stands for something like Owen or Oscar or oh my God, what am I doing watching this podcast? Then let me know. Unless you're happy to be called Osho, that's fine. April says, hi Viji and Osho, and then little bits of chat going backwards and forwards as everybody's saying hello to everybody else. Marilyn's joined us as well from Colorado, I think. Marilyn says, great shot, April. April says, thank you, Marilyn. I take photos when my husband is travelling 50 miles an hour or more, and also the best pics out there are the ones when you're on the road. Yes, if you are driving, somebody else is driving, rather. If you're driving, don't be taking the photos. If somebody else is driving, then yes, the excuse to just kind of take the photos is quite fun. But you do have to remember, generally speaking, to have a faster shutter speed to compensate for the fact that you're moving, so you don't get too much in the way of motion blur. Viji's wondering if Osho is a new member of our community. He joined us here last week, I seem to remember. Okay, Viji says, tricky edit, Kim, and the reflection is good. Marilyn says, well, that's hard to do, April, you're good. Okay, that's okay. Susan says, great edit, Kim. The brown and blue really complement one another. Robert says, looks a little bit like Led Zeppelin's Physical Graffiti album cover. I know where you're coming from with that, yes. Osho says, my name is Owen. Okay, Owen, I will try and remember to call you Owen. Yeah, Viji says, I always ask, a good way to ask for a name. I will just warn you, some of these I have to try and remember. AMG is Anne, Photo Bazaar is Robert, Osho is now Owen. It is an awful lot easier when people use their real name. I don't have to hesitate with April or Susan or Meg. But I know there are a couple of others out there. But I do my best to try and remember. Right, okay, so where are we next? Let's move on then to, next up we're going to go to Viji. And just before I get to Viji, April says, I don't mean to brag, but on this trip to New York City, I took a picture that made a black and white shortlist photo in the Amateur Photographer of the Year contest. Well, that's certainly worth feeling smug about, that is. Excellent. That's really good to hear, April. I'm delighted for you. Yeah, that's cool. Actually, if you've got a copy of it, put it in the Facebook group or the where are we? If I do that, yes, don't forget we've got the Flickr group or the Facebook group, Flickr or Facebook /groups/UPwKA. put and this is true for anybody. April, I would love to see your photo, but anybody else as well. If you've got a photo that you're feeling particularly proud of, one that's done well, and you'd like to just kind of show it off, get a little bit of extra validation from the group, then put it in one of our groups, whether on Facebook or Flickr, and then because I think it's not just a case of showing off or whatever. I think there's something. We all like to kind of celebrate in what everybody else is doing. We also like to be inspired by what everybody else is doing. So if you've got a picture that's done particularly well, then yeah, show it off. Put it in the groups. Tell us a little bit about the photo and what have you. And it's really nice for the rest of us to see it as well. So yeah, if you can do that, April, that would be lovely. And yeah, lots of people saying well done to April. Okay, so where were we? Let's let me minimize that. Close that one and bring up Viji. So, no, not that one. We'll do that one and then that one. Yes. So this is Viji's shot, and Viji says, "This photograph was taken a few years back on my phone. I was looking through old photographs, revisiting old trips, and this one leapt out at me. Such a dramatic shot. Can the sky be made more dramatic, making it look a bit eerie? For critique section on this, I would like to know a bit more about the editing with Photoshop. Maybe bringing in a dramatic sky, maybe with lightning that would match the mood of the picture. Also, is it unethical to add elements which are not present? Though I am more of a less edit kind of photographer, I would like to know more about the editing side and the limits while using Photoshop." Okay, so this is interesting, this is fun. So what we've got here then is we've got a shot, Viji's taken this shot, and it is already quite a moody, dramatic sky. We've got the line of trees on the horizon, and then we've got the river in the foreground, which is reflecting, if not, it's not a absolute smooth, we've got ripples in it, but there's enough stillness in it to be able to reflect the sense of the colours of the tree and the greyness and the contrast in the clouds in the sky. So we've already got a reasonably moody shot here, and what Viji is wanting to know is can we up the moodiness, the drama of it? But at the same time, she's also asked, could we add something like lightning and what have you, which on the one hand seems like fun, but is there an ethical problem to this? And the ethics side of it as such really comes down to where you're placing the image and what you're telling other people about the image. So if, for example, we were able to put a convincing looking streak of lightning in it, and then you put it into some kind of competition which said captured photos of lightning, then essentially you would be lying, because you didn't capture the lightning, you placed it in afterwards. And this is true of all such things. If you manipulate, you add elements, big significant elements to an image, and then essentially try and pretend as though it was there already and you just happen to get really good timing and you happen to be just such a great photographer that you managed to do that, then yes, it's straightforwardly lying. And therefore unethical in practically every moral code that humans tend to have. However, there's a difference between, what have I just done? I've taken April's picture and taken out a section of the middle and shifted a whole chunk of the wall over to improve the sense of the photo. Now, in essence, I've taken the editing and I have lied with that. But there's also the notion of telling a story. Now, if I call myself a narrative photographer, a storytelling photographer, I'm not a documentarist. And again, if April was to do that kind of edit and then put it in as a kind of documentary type thing and say, this is it exactly as I photographed it from a moving car, then that's lying. Whereas I think if what you're trying to do is there's an essence of a New York wall, there's an essence of dramatic sky, I think editing it to enhance the drama of it, there's not a problem with that. And then if you want to add other elements, but then if you are adding other elements, you put it into competitions where they specifically say composite images. So if you add lightning to this, or you to add somebody on a boat fishing, then that would be a composite image. Interestingly, PhotoCrowd has now just is starting to allow AI images, so long as you specifically tick the box that says that you have used artificial intelligence in the creation of the photo. And now, whether that's the entire photo is AI, or whether you've used AI to say add lightning to an image, then you would have to tick the box. And at that point, they have specific competitions whereby you are allowed to use AI. You just have to be clear about it. And then most of the competitions though are photo only. So you have to tick the box to say that you haven't used AI. And I think this is an interesting way in the kind of development of the AI story, really, the narrative, where it's going in the future. AI is here to stay. And now AI can create very realistic looking photographic images. Now, it's not photography, because photography is light hitting a sensor. So if you're interested in learning and mastering photography, then it's anything more than if you like sculpting, you hit a button on a 3D printer and it prints, and it creates a sculpture for you. It's not sculpture, it's a different kind of thing. It depends whether your focus is on the final image or your focus is on the process of getting the final image. And if your focus is on the process, then AI isn't going to replace the process. Where am I going with this? I think I'm going off topic here, or straying too far off. Let's come back to this notion of Viji's picture. And in essence, I would say if you want to add elements or take away significant elements or replace elements, so if we were to take this tree over here and replace it with a fishing boat, or a fisherman's hut or something like that, then I think at the point you would have to choose where you're placing this image and choose your words carefully when you present it. So I hope that kind of makes sense. I don't have that much of a problem with the notion of AI on itself. I think there's potential use for a lot of creativity with it. Where I have a problem with it is when people say it's something that it's not. Much like you can use Photoshop to turn a picture to look like a pen and ink drawing. And that's fine if you know it's a Photoshop made using a pen and ink filter. But if you were to then try and claim that you had pen and ink skills and had drawn it yourself, that's where you've crossed the line into lying. So I hope that makes sense. So let's come back to your picture then, Viji. So we've got the picture, and what can we do with it? So let's open this in Photoshop. And first of all, let's see if we can just balance the image and maybe up the drama a little bit, just without doing any, at the very basics. So the first thing that strikes me is it does look a little bit dark. So if I go to the levels here, and we can see there's a little bit of a gap over on the right here, and if I just drag that up, we can move that up a little to the left. We can see that it brightens the whole picture, which is interesting. Now, I think this could brighten a lot more, except for the fact we then end up blowing out the sky. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this to the left and brighten with the eye on the water down here. Then what I'm going to do, using masking it, I've got that at 100%, and we put that to black. I can just kind of paint the sky back in like that. And now what we notice over here is I can drag this up a bit more, and now we've got a much more balanced sky and foreground. So we've gone from that to that. And it's sort of really lifted what's going on in the water. The water's reflecting the brighter parts of the sky as well. If I wanted to, I could swap that back to white, and I could even just, oh, not that, back in the levels mask here, I could even drop a couple of, well, okay, tell you what, let's take that down to 24%. I could lighten a couple of little areas of sky if I wanted and create a little bit more contrast. Don't have to, that's just an option. So what we can see here is we've got this, I'll take that back. So we've got that. Now, next thing I might do is if I select all, copy and paste and create a new layer, combination layer of this, then what we can do is I'll maybe go to filter, camera raw, and with something like this, what I might do, if we took the clarity tool, you can see that then really boosts everything up. But we then lose some of the detail in the shadows. So what I might do is in the light, bring the shadows up a little bit, because the clarity tool tends to, or maybe I just drag the clarity over there and then play around with the shadows until I've got a little bit more where I want. So I bring a little bit more of that green back in. Where this might be different is if I was putting this into black and white. If I was putting this into black and white, maybe actually I wouldn't want the shadows. Maybe I could even boost the contrast and go much more for a high contrast silhouetted trees. So in a black and white, I'm whacking up the clarity tool, and then I'm whacking up the contrast, and now we're getting this very kind of dramatic black and white with silhouetted trees. But I think if we're staying in colour, I think bring that back to there and bring the shadows back up a little bit. So now the clouds are looking a little bit more menacing. If we wanted, I suppose we could just add a slight touch of vignette on the edge there. And you see, so we've gone from that to that to that. Okay, so that's now looking a bit more dramatic. The next thing then is if we wanted to add in the lightning bolt. And here we end up with the potential problem, because there are some things which generative fill and AI can do very well, slotting into a photo, and some things it doesn't do quite so well. So let's say I decided to take a little spot over here, and into the generative fill I type in swan. Okay, we'll give this just a little moment and see whether it manages to create a convincing swan to place onto the water. Now, so meanwhile, what have we got? Oh, April says excellent definition of a true photo. Yes, a true photo is where the light hits the sensor. Okay, so now we've got a swan, and it looks like a drop of water. That looks a bit odd. Okay, there's another swan. There's another swan. Yeah, it's a swan with a bit of a fountain behind it. No idea why it's doing that. I think it's mistaking a little bit of light up here for a fountain. Anyway, we can see that you can add a swan into it. So, but, that's, maybe there's more or less convincing with it. But what happens if we decide to go for lightning? Now, what I could do is if I go to select sky, so now what it's done is it's selected the sky, and I type into generative fill. In fact, what was your phrase? Dramatic. So we could say dramatic sky with lightning storm. Okay, and then hit enter and see what it's going to do. Is it going to come up with something nice and convincing? Well, yeah, I kind of looked at this one earlier, and it's not necessarily going to do the job yet. So here we go. We've now got lightning, and it's given us 3 different versions here. And the problem with this is it looks utterly false. It's not working. It's sort of done some funny things to the trees here. It's got a kind of bad paint quality to it, or digital paint. It looks like it's like something you've got a cheap paint, or you've just got a basic paint program and you've kind of smudged something with your finger on an iPad. It's not convincing me that this is what real lightning is looking like. So when you're using the whole sky, it's not working. The second problem that we also have here is the fact that if you had genuine lightning in the sky, you would also have genuine reflections in the water, which we're not getting because we've selected the sky. So that's not going to work. Maybe if what we did was we just decided to select like the idea of a single lightning strand coming down, then perhaps what we could do is we could do something coming down here like that, and then actually let's give it space to put something into the water in the background. Maybe we could do a little lightning fork coming off here, and again allow for potential. So we've created a selection area where it can come in, and I could put lightning streak reflected in the water. So that's now giving it instructions. Hopefully it will know that the lightning streak is supposed to be at the top and the reflected into the water below. With a bit of luck, that might help. Oh, Nadia's joined us. So hi Nadia, glad you could make it. And oh, there's nothing there. There's nothing there. And there's a little lump of wood there. So obviously, okay, I didn't spell lightning right. That's right. Let's try spelling G-I-G-H-T. No wonder it didn't know what to do. This is the problem. Type away, and if you don't get your spelling right, AI doesn't know actually how to interpret it. What a surprise. What do you mean you weren't able to read my mind? So let's try that again. Oh, there's a little lightning bolt. There's a bigger lightning bolt. There's another lightning bolt. And what is slightly interesting is you can see it has done the reflection in the water, which makes it fractionally more convincing, except for the fact that, to be honest, it doesn't really feel that convincing. When you look at real photos of lightning, there's something in the way that it affects not just the cloud behind it, but the clouds all around it. They tend to light up a bit more. So, yes, you can add a streak of lightning to it. No, at the moment, the AI isn't convincing enough with this. That's not to say that it won't be 6 months from now, or even 3 months from now. It's moving at an incredible pace. It's constantly getting better. So, to come back then to your original point then, Viji, which is, what can you do? And I think ultimately what we've done so far here is the idea of make the image more dramatic. If that's your original image, we increased the levels but masked out the sky so that we kind of made the water lighter, and then we came in and we boosted the clarity tool, which really kind of added that extra level of texture to the clouds and that bit of contrast. If you really want to whack up the contrast, doesn't work quite so well in colour, but if you put it in black and white, you can get away with more tonal contrast that way. So I hope that makes sense, Viji. But thanks very much for sending that image in. Something to play with, and also to give us this idea of, AI is capable of incredible things, but there are certain things it hasn't mastered just yet. Great comments we get. Meg says she likes the reflections of the trees in the water. Various people saying hi to Nadia. Viji says sometimes AI tests our patience, but AI is real fun and exasperating sometimes. Truly funny, but Kim, your editing was terrific. Oh, thank you. Okay, so hope you're all finding this useful. So a little reminder then that if you find these podcasts useful, interesting, entertaining, and you would like to support them, then buymeacoffee.com/Kim Ayres is one of the ways you can do it. Also, don't forget to subscribe, don't forget to hit like. Like this video. The more people who like it, the more likely YouTube is to show it to other people. Share this with your friends if you know anybody, or drag them along to the podcast as well. And don't forget as well that we have 244 previous episodes which you can go and dip in and out of as well. So there's all sorts of information back there. You don't have to watch the podcast from start to finish. Certainly from about episode 80 onwards, I think I got quite good at writing out a menu in the description part, so you can leap to areas that you're interested in. But scan back through, find a topic you like, and then dig in and out. There's lots of interesting stuff. But also, if you have ideas for the podcast, if you have topics you would particularly like me to cover, as well as having your own images that you would like me to give feedback on, then let me know. This podcast is here for you, okay? This podcast isn't just me sitting here working it all out on my own to deliver something which may or may not be there. There are millions of videos out there on YouTube already doing that. This podcast, the way that it works is it's interactive, it's long form, it's chatty. Sometimes, well, I don't know, is it too chatty? I go off on tangents, but it's interactive, it is chatty, it's conversation, and it's feedback, and it's back and forth, and I am here to use the skills that I've got in photography, editing, narrative, to help you grow and develop your photography. So, questions, there is no such thing as a stupid question. A question is just an unknown. If you don't understand something, here's the place to ask. Right, okay, so let's move on then to finally we're going to Robert in Texas. Now, 2 weeks ago, or a couple of weeks back, 2-3 weeks ago, I've lost sense of time. Anyway, we had a challenge, shadows, light and shadow and light challenge, and Robert sent in this photo. No, not that one. That one. There we go. And at the time, all we were talking about was, does this work effectively as a as a photo for the shadow. And one of the things I sort of talked about slightly on the moment was the fact that while there is a shadow, the shadow is quite small compared to the rest of the photo, and so perhaps wasn't working quite as well as it could. But Robert also asked me if I could give him some proper detailed feedback on this photo, and he sent me the original as well, so that's what we're about to look at. I can see oh, little Miss Shaz 420, that's my niece Charlotte. Talk about trying to remember names from YouTube handles. Says, hi, sorry I missed a lot working, I thought I'd drop in. Happy Father's Day, Uncle Kim, love you loads. Oh, that's so sweet, thank you, Charlotte. Right, thank you. Yes, okay, so back to the oh, where are we? Yes, as it shows, you've totally and utterly thrown me off course. I love you lots nonetheless. Right, where was it? Yes, Robert. Okay, Robert's photo. So let's come back to this. So Robert sent me the raw file, which always makes life a lot easier if you're wanting proper feedback. So this is the raw file that he sent in, and what we can see is that the scene is much bigger than the original photo. So Robert said, this is the photo I took in Egypt this February. I like the shadow and the natural spotlight on the subject. I'm not sure the edit is great, and I hope you will critique the photo. So let's move on and see what we're going on. Now, the key thing here, I think, with Robert's photo is if we zoom in, what we find is that the real story for this photo, if you're trying to make it about the shadow, okay, so I'll tell you what, let's click back to here, because this is the point that I wanted to make before. If the photo is actually about the shadow, then the shadow needs to occupy much more, or rather the relationship between the shadow and the subject. The shadow needs to occupy a much larger proportion of the image. Okay, and so really what you want is you want something like about this close in. The problem with this close in is actually the quality is not there. So much of because it's taken at a bit of a distance, we've come in and it's very fuzzy, but it's not just fuzzy because of zooming in. I know Robert uses a Canon R5 which has 45 megapixels, and when it's done properly is super sharp, and you could be more detailed than this, but it hasn't caught it. But if I go back to, where are we, to Photoshop, we can see this was ISO 640, 35mm, f5, 1,000th of a second. Now normally at 1,000th of a second, even if you're taking it from a moving car, that ought to have been caught in focus. So I don't know whether it may be focused slightly in front of or behind or something, but something wasn't quite right with the capture. So you're kind of slightly at an uphill battle here already. The idea is interesting if you're this close in, but the quality isn't there. You could, when we go back to your photo here, if we are pulled out this far on screen, you can kind of get away with it. You can get away with it on social media. You can't tell, except for the fact that we're seeing the figure and we're not really seeing the shadow unless we're trying to look for it. And you are up against this problem of how easily are you communicating the narrative you want to communicate. So overall, what we're talking about here is the fact that the narrative that you were hoping to communicate, which is man and shadow, is falling at the post. You're not really able to get what you want. In order to make it about the man in the shadow, you've got to be in so close that we've lost the quality for the photo that you've got. There's other things about this, which is the fact that the man is to the left of the picture, and there's a huge amount of space off to the right here, which generally speaking, when you've got a photo of a person moving in it, unless there's a really compelling reason, you kind of want to have a better balance. You've got the shadow in the middle, but you might have been better off having the shadow more over onto the rule of thirds and have the man slightly more in the middle. So let's go back then to your picture here. And just as a starting point, just so that we've got, and what we can see here is there's a lot more to the right. There's a car here and everything else. So, but just so that we're playing with something, I will just bring the shadows up a little bit, take the highlights down a little bit. Actually, we can boost this a touch here, give us a slightly better sense of what's going on before it, and maybe optics, not optics, detail, soften the over sharpening that Photoshop always tends to do with it, and open it up. So this is the photo that we're playing with. And so what we can see here is with the photo is we've got the man with shadow, but like I say, as we come in close, we see the detail isn't really there properly on it. Over here, we got somebody leaning against the car, listening to their phone, earpads in, and something like that. There's a kind of a story in itself, except that that's very dark and lost over there. And at that point, you probably want to have more of the car. So that sub-story, I think, is lost to us. Our attention is getting drawn over here. Now, like I say, I think if you were really going for that shadow thing, you need to be something more like this. Okay, and then at this point we have the shadow, but you can see just how much of the image. You've got rid of 90-95% of the image, and like I say, at that point the quality isn't there. So, but does that mean that this photo is a write-off? Not necessarily. I think what we could do is we could reinterpret it. I just have the shadow as one aspect of it rather than as the key aspect of it. Because what else is also interesting here, I think, is this whole mass of carpets that we've got lined up here and disappearing inside the garage there as well. So what if we were to recrop this and make a note of, now, very slight tilt, just line up this vertical here, just so that it feels straighter. That feels slightly more comfortable. We'll forget about the lad with the car listening to his iPhone over there. Bring this more over in this direction and see what we've got. Maybe we could just make that slightly bigger, something like that. And now we've put the guy pretty much around our rule of thirds bit here. We've got the garage. Yeah, something like that. And well, maybe bring that down a little bit, this up a little bit. Something like that as a crop. Now, at the moment, it's all feeling pretty dark. So what we need to do is we need to now take this back into Camera Raw and see what else we can find in here. Because what happens is if I come here into the light and I bring the shadows up, we've got an awful lot more going on inside the garage, which is kind of interesting, which I quite like. And we can bring the exposure up a touch more. We might take the highlights down so that this bit doesn't become quite so glary. But then we can play around a little touch more with this. So by bringing up the shadows, we managed to lighten up these carpets. And then at that point, I think if we go to the effects and we play with the clarity, a touch like that, we see we're getting much more out of those carpets. Okay, we could maybe even just have a little vignette on the back here just to kind of pull that bit round. So do this. Now I think we're getting something slightly more interesting. If I take the levels, what happens is I thought there's a little bit of a gap here. I can nudge that up a little bit more, but what I will do is I will mask back in. Let's take that back up to 100%. This little bit of kind of bright wall that's grabbing the attention. We can see here that that's taken that out, so I can actually bring that up a little bit more to there. So we've now still got quite an interesting photo. Then what I would do, I'll stick all that, not that, copy all these layers together, paste them onto a new layer. Now, I think what I also quite am interested in here is there's obviously a yellow shift because this is kind of, this shadow, sun's very low in the sky, just cutting through, and it's kind of what you've caught. That warmth, I think, if we were to, let me just show you something here. If I go to, actually, I'll tell you what, I'm going to duplicate that layer so that we can come back to the original. So if I go to Camera Raw here and we play with the colour, so I take the colour and I blue shift it a little bit, okay? Now, obviously blue shift too much and it's like that. Yellow shift is too much. But what I want to do is I'm thinking about the shadow part of this. If I nudge this just a little bit to the left here, we can see, look at the carpets. The carpets suddenly kind of spring to life a little bit more. But we've lost the warmth over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mask that. Then I'm going to flick that back to white, or sort of invert mask, so the whole thing. And then paint back in the bluishness into the shadows. Okay, so we're going to get the shadows on those carpets, maybe that little bit of garage door here, maybe even a little bit of garage door there, maybe even this little bit of mud patch down here. I'm going to leave the cardboard though, because if I put the cardboard, actually we've lost a little bit of warmth there, so I could maybe just change that and put a little bit of cardboard back in here. Quite like the kind of warmer mud work on there, but you can see that I kind of overdid that. They take that bit here, that actually from that to that is subtle, but it really lifts those carpets out of the shadows, and we're creating that a little bit like we did with April's picture of the New York buildings, where we're getting that contrast, that bluish contrast with the warmish yellowish contrast, is kind of helping to create more depth to the image. So now what I do, if we take all that and hit the wrong thing here, put that on new one. Now if we take that back into camera raw filter, I think what we're looking now is at the idea of the finishing touches. So with something like this now, auto, no, I don't think so. So what we might do is just play with the contrast a little bit, maybe again touch up that vignette a little bit more, and then maybe we could even go back to the clarity and boost it just a touch more again. And so now what we've got is we've got a whole new narrative out of your photo. So we've gone from your black and white one, which didn't really manage to quite get close in. There wasn't enough of the shadow. But now what this is about is we've got the guy, we've got plenty of space in front of me. He's walking into the scene. The scene is full of all these multicolored carpets, but there's that notion of grunge almost. You know, we can see now, it's having played with that clarity tool, the dirt, the grime, the muddy handprints on the wall, the cardboard, the texture in the kind of rusty rundown garage. It's much more of a kind of that grunge feel to it, while, you know, contrasting with these brightly coloured carpets and rugs as well. And so he's moving towards it. He's got his phone in his hand. Part of the narrative now is the fact that the sun is hitting him, but this is cool in the shadow, but you've still got the warmth of the sun, and then you've got the shadow. The shadow is now a bit part. It's an enhancement. It's a supporting role in the overall picture rather than being the focus of the picture. And this is ultimately what it comes down to. Where's your narrative? And in your original edit, you were trying to make the shadow the focus of the image. That's what the image was all about, except the fact that the picture as it was couldn't support that narrative. So what we've done is we've taken this picture and we've created a new narrative out of it and edited it so that the shadow is just supporting the idea of the picture rather than being the key aspect to the picture. The key story is now about this person walking in this environment with all these carpets kicking about the place, which I kind of suspect is probably what you were looking at in the first place. Did I see something earlier where you said that you were in a van when you took the photo? Yes, Robert says taken from a moving van. And so that notion of the moving van, I would have thought that kind of quickness, you're not going to, oh look, there's a man with a shadow. You're looking at, here's a man in an environment, and it's that environment that you took because you didn't zoom in just to get the shadow. And then afterwards, you've noticed the shadow. And when it comes to the shadow and light challenge, you thought, oh, there's somebody with a shadow. Can I squeeze it in? I'm not knocking you for that. I do that kind of thing all the time. But ultimately, I think this is really actually the narrative that grabbed your eye in the first place. You're driving along, or somebody else is driving you along, you're pointing the camera out the window, just like April was doing in New York. You see something interesting, you go click. You're going kind of too fast, so that in a way you're kind of clicking almost on instinct. You're seeing something, you're going click. Later on you'll work out whether it worked or not, and there will be a lot of misses. But this is one whereby it's this story which is what grabbed your attention in the first place. And ultimately, if we get the edits right, this is a story that we're then able to really bring out of the original photo. So I hope that all makes sense, Robert. But no, not that one. That one, yes. So, but thank you so much for sending that one. It gave me quite a bit of a challenge again to sort of look at the original photo, look at the raw file, and think, where can we find something interesting out of this? So yeah, fun photo, and I hope you like what I did with it. Okay, what else have we got? Oh yes, Charlotte said black and white makes the shadows stand out more. Yes, it did, absolutely. But like I say, the rest of the photo didn't support it. Viji said quite dramatic, you have a good eye. Susan says pity about the quality, Robert, as I think it had good potential in black and white. April says really good shot. I like Kim's edit with the moving it into the thirds. Viji says quite sharp. Now Susan says Kim's edit definitely tells us more of the story about Robert's image, and Robert says I agree, it's a better narrative for the photo. Thank you for your help and suggestions, appreciate your insights. Excellent. Well, I'm glad to be of help. So that was basically that's basically it for the podcast. Now coming up next week is the challenge, so don't run off just yet. Just remind you here that we have the 3 photo story challenge, or triptych. You can make it in a way. If you can do it as a triptych, the idea with a triptych is that the 3 photos are put onto one photo. So if you want to go back, look at the last episode 244, loads of information about triptychs and about 3 photo stories. So if you're not sure what I'm on about, go and check out that one. Loads of information, loads of possible ideas of how you can approach it. And for Susan, who came along to a workshop yesterday I did in Castle Douglas, she's got even more ideas to play with, but although I got the hint that she'd already got her photo sorted. What I would say though, yes, so the 3 photo challenge, the idea that we're taking, rather than everything being focused on the one photo, it's what are you creating over the 3 photos. Now, you can send me 3 photos, but remember you have to look at how they fit together, what combines them, what binds them all. Is it one object in different places, one object from different angles, one object in different locations? Is it 3 objects taken in the same way from the same angle with the same lighting? If you combine them together, is it about a sequence of events that moves through time? Or is it about an overall shape whereby you create 3 different images, but combined the 3 images, they make an interesting composition as one image as well? So lots of ideas there. So the challenge then is to put in your 3 photo story, whether it's 3 separate photos or 3 separate photos combined onto the same image. And get that to me then by Friday, so that I've got time to put together the podcast Saturday morning at the absolute latest, and then next Sunday, which will be the 22nd, it's the 15th today, next Sunday we will then go through the photos, the three photo story challenge, or the triptych challenge, and we will inspire each other, hopefully. So yes, send your either stick your images again in the Facebook group or the Flickr group. Tell me a bit about the photo, a little bit of background, why you did it, any interesting anecdotes attached to it, and that's always part of these challenges. The challenges, there's the photo itself, but I think it's also really interesting the stories behind the photos that you've put in for the challenge, and I really look forward to seeing what you're all gonna put on. What have we got? Meg's saying hi to Charlotte and having a chat with her cousin. And Viji says, have a wonderful weekend, a good week, everyone. So that's it. Thank you ever so much for Viji, Robert and April for sending in the images. Thank to all of the rest of you for leaving comments and saying hello and being a part of this podcast. And I look forward to seeing you all next week. Take care. Bye-bye.